So all the selections are out for the second test in these exciting series. Now, of course, the second test is where it can be won, also where the other team can pull back into it and set up a finale. So super exciting. So Australia-England, let's have a look at the changes. Now in the pack for England, not many changes at all. Curry is out of the tour with that concussion, which is a shame, but the experienced Underhill can slot in. I don't think he's quite as good, maybe out wide as Curry is, but maybe he's a little bit better in the tackle, a little bit lower to the ground, so I don't think they'll lose too much there. I was questioning the speed of Billy Vunipola. Many of you guys said he played well last week, and he did play well, but he just looks a little slow, although he hits the ball up hard. That's kind of his job. He's got a nice pass on him. The front five, they delivered some decent platform. They scored their maul try. The problem with England, of course, was doing stuff with that possession. So if this pack can secure possession again, great, but can the backs do something with it? That's the question, and this is where all the changes really are in the backs. All the big changes, all the big calls. Jack van Poortvliet is in for Care. That's a bit of a surprise. I think that's more just of a straight rotation to give the young nine some experience. Care I thought was fine, to be honest. No reason to drop him, but if you're giving Van Poortvliet some experience, that's great. I've been talking about him for, a year or two now, saying he's got that all-round game for the internationals. He's got the physique. So let's see what he does when he gets in there. It'll be interesting. He's alongside Smith. It's Smith and Farrell access again, who we knew they were going to have another chance. Jones said as much, but if they perform poorly, could that actually be the start of the end for the Smith-Farrell combination? We will see. But there's a new 13, which is Porter. Now, Porter of Leicester was a guy who I wanted in the team, but kind of starting at 12 really, so let's see how that goes. He probably is a bit more physical, to be honest. Marchant is a good player. I don't think we've seen the best of him because that Smith-Farrell axis hasn't been working for me, but he's a bit unlucky. But Porter comes in. If he goes well, maybe he'll make a move into 12 at some point as well. I don't know. And it's interesting, there is a 6-2 split as well. So Farrell's obviously going to be covering 10. Porter is there obviously as a centre, but we need another centre. Is it Noel? Is it Freeman? That'll be interesting. On the wings, just mentioned Freeman. He's in for Thokanasiga, which I think's fair enough. Thokanasiga didn't seem to be moving right. Doesn't look quite right, to be honest. Maybe injuries and whatnot. Freeman's in instead of Arundel. Now, I'm a bit gutted Arundel's not in. Some of you guys saying that Arundel's very young, he shouldn't be starting, but Freeman's young and he's got, the same inexperience as Arundel, so that doesn't really fit. But I guess if you want to play the same as you did last week with the two wingers working inside a lot, Freeman is the bigger guy, so I kind of understand that, but it is still a fairly slow back three with Nolan Stewart in there as well, and a fairly slow backline full stop. So they need to really step up and convert some of these opportunities. So that's the big play for England. And the bench there, largely unchanged. Chesham, Ludlam covering 6 and 8. Jack Willis coming in covering 7. And only 2 backs on the bench, Kerr and Arundel, like I said. Arundel covering the back 3. And then someone's going to have to cover the centres. Now, Australia had to cover some losses there from the last test. The big news for Australia is Tupou is in there, in the tight head. He's recovered from his calf injury and he sets up this clash that we've been wanting with Ellis Genge, the two fiery props. Now, I think Tupou's been talking up as well, smashing Genge. I love that sort of chat. That's going to be awesome. I hope he is fully fit. They had to replace Swain, who of course is suspended from the controversial, if you like, incidents there with Johnny Hill. Matt Phillip is in, 21 tests, he's got plenty of experience, he's been in the team for a while, so that's not a problem. So I think that's covered pretty well. Plus Tupou in there actually maybe makes the pack a bit better than it was last week, dare I say. The back row I think did really well. Hooper was on fire, and then Samu coming on was super impressive off the bench, so good stuff in the pack I think. Then we do have a little bit of a change up in the backs. We see Paisami coming in for Ikitau, and I rate both those players, so I don't think that's a problem. Wright comes in onto one wing, and I did have question marks over him when I've seen him in the past. Let me know if you're a bit iffy about him or if you think he is international quality. And then, of course, they need a replacement for that nasty broken arm at fullback. Pataya comes in, who I rate highly. He's really dangerous. So I think on balance, Australia have covered it pretty well. They have had to call in Frost to cover the second row, who's uncapped, but he's over 2 metres, an absolute lighthouse, another Brumby. Get those Brumby forwards in. We see Gordon come in there, O'Connor on the bench as well, Parisse covering all the outside backs. So let me know if you think that Australian team is slightly stronger, slightly weaker, or about the same. I call this game 50-50 once again. It's an absolute cracker with England. All the pressure's on them, really. They need to win to get back into the series. Let me know what you think is going to happen. Now the exciting game in New Zealand, Ireland versus New Zealand, with New Zealand coming up with a big win in the last game. Ireland not making changes, resisting the temptation maybe. So, fairly settled. They've had another week in country, if you like, which may well help. The same there, front five. Amani was pretty good last game. Every time, maybe I say maybe he's not the right selection, he always seems to respond. He was impressive. Probably the least impressive of the 4 flankers was actually Sam Cane, but we'll come on to that. But they stay there with that pack. Doris, some calls for Doris to go. Maybe Coombs come in. Maybe Conan from the bench, but no. Farrell sticking with that pack. Sexton, a bit of controversy. He was past fit with his HIAs, his return to play protocols, but some controversy that, really he shouldn't be playing, but he is fit, so we have to go with that. Then the same as we see in the centres, Hinshaw and Ringrose, who I actually thought did pretty well. Aki on the bench, so plenty of centre cover there, all their best centres. Low on one wing, and Hansen is back in for Keith Earls. Now, I do wonder if Hansen would have played anyway if he was available last week, and Earls had played 2 games in a row, that Wednesday, then the Saturday. So I think that's fair enough, and no particular reflection on Earls. So largely, Farrell is sticking with that starting 15 that he wanted. Now on the bench, some good news as well. Herring and Beelum are back in, the guys he would have wanted last week probably. A negative test for them, so they're back in the squad. So probably on balance, slightly stronger I'd say for Ireland. They've been in the country another week, they've acclimatised. It's just mentally, can they get over that big loss from last week? So that can be super exciting. And on to New Zealand, they've had to shuffle a little bit. Bad news for Whitelock. I think there was some delayed concussion there. He had to drop out, and Sam Whitelock was really good in the last game. Super impressive. I think they would have wanted to stick with Scott Barrett at 6 because that was working fairly well. But they're going to have to move him into the second row. And because of other problems they've got with their second rows, they've had to call up Tuipulotu, who wasn't really expecting to be involved in this series because he's just come back from Japan. So he had to suddenly sort out his childcare and get over there, and he's on the bench. So they'll probably play a Barrett and Metallic for quite a long time because Tuipulotu's only just really got up to speed with what's going on. So they've managed to cover that just, and that means they've kind of had to play around with their back row again. And balance-wise, it's probably not great. Talent-wise, it is good. Papali'i has been on fire this year. Many people want him to play instead of Kane at 7, but he's come into 6. I did wonder in my previous conversations with Zach from Hacker Time Rugby, maybe he could play 6, but most people are saying he's not really a 6. So you've kind of got 2 7s there. And Ardy Surveyor, who many people say his best position is 7, so it's super quick and mobile. Is it balanced? I'm not so sure. Suakula, maybe he could have started. Maybe Sevilla could have gone to 6 or 7 or something like that. Always a good discussion on the back row. So I don't think that would have been an ideal situation for them. The backs, though, unchanged. They were really good last week. Super sharp. I thought Fainganuku really gives that physical edge on one wing. Reese, the finishing on the other wing. The all-round Georgie Barrett. Tupaia went well. Rico Ioane went well. Bowden Barrett. Yeah, they all went well. Some fantastic pass from Smith. So apart from that, shuffle around with Whitelock. They're pretty much where they want to be. But let's see if that does just unbalance them slightly in the pack. Maybe make them slightly less physical for Ireland. I don't know. On the bench there, Ross might make his debut off the bench, and another guy we may see is Fakatava, a 9 who many of you want as the impact 9 anyway, so that's good news. And more good news is Will Jordan is back in the mix. Almost too good to be a substitute, would start for any other team, but he has just come back into it, so what a great sub for them. So how's this going to go? Can New Zealand see it off, or can possibly Ireland really dig deep and come back with a win to set up the finale? Now in the South Africa versus Wales game, there's some serious contrast here. Wales are pretty much unchanged. The forced change was Cuthbert in. Adams has got a few knee problems. I don't think they would have played Cuthbert. Maybe they're saying he's good under the high ball. He is, but so's Adams. So really they're staying exactly the same. Francis though is out with concussion. That's a pretty big blow because we know how good South Africa are up front. So Wainwright has got a big job coming off the bench for his debut, that is for sure. Apart from that, as is. So you can see the team there. They went pretty well, to be honest. Rafael I thought was pretty impressive as well. The new guy in there, Reece Samet looking very sharp. North, another game under his belt, should be even better, to be honest. Hardy, I loved his box kicking last time. I wonder if they'll stick to the same tactic of the contested kick and chase, or they'll change it up. Now South Africa, by contrast, have made 14 changes, a completely new team, although the team looks pretty handy, to be honest. Some saying it's disrespectful. Well, if that's the case, Wales needs to go out and show it's disrespectful by beating them well. If South Africa win, they'll say, well, we beat Wales' best team with our second choice team. So plenty of interesting psychology going on there. Only Etzebeth keeping his place, but plenty of good players coming in. Of the uncapped players starting, Evan Roos is one we're desperate to see at 8. He should be fireworks. 4 more uncapped on the bench. And big news, Andre Pollard is back. They probably needed him last week. They just squeaked the win, of course. He's the captain as well. They stick with the 6-2 split, and I think it's a better 6-2 split when Willemse's on the bench because he's so versatile, plays everywhere apart from 9. So in the starting team, Hallant's there at fullback. He's a classy player. Many of you wanted to play fullback anyway. All changing the centres, but this is a centre pairing that could potentially start for any other team in the world. I think England would kill for this centre partnership. The huge Andre Esterhazen, who's been absolutely fantastic for Harlequins. Creel comes back from Japan. We know how good he is at 13, 50-odd caps. I really like that centre partnership, especially with Andre Pollard back at 10. What a great midfield. And talking of great players, Fassi is an absolute lightning player on the wing there. Now, it would be great if Fassi could start for South Africa, but obviously breaking through Mapimpi and Colby is incredibly hard, but what a great chance for him. Hendrickser at 9 is definitely a 9 I'm very interested in, possibly the new number 2-9 if he goes well. Evan Roos, we mentioned, a returning Peter Steff to Toy. So you say this is a second choice South African team, but many of these players aren't second choice quality players, shall we say. Marcel Coetzee at open side is a player many South Africans wanted actually in the Lions tour and didn't make it. So he's got a point to prove. Then a change in the front row, Anikane Dweba, who's probably the third choice hooker. Let's see if he can break in. Thomas Toy there at loose head. And then on the bench, plenty of big players as well. Obviously in the front row, Marks and Koch coming on. That's going to be super hard for Wales. And some other guys I haven't seen a lot of. Let me know what you think of these other guys here, like Elstat, etc. So who's going to win that game? With South Africa playing a completely changed side, Wales sticking as they are, really sets up the narrative super nicely. Can Wales possibly bounce back from that heartbreaking loss at the last minute last week? And then finally, Scotland versus Argentina. I have to apologise to Scotland fans. I just didn't have enough time in my life to watch Scotland and do a match report on it live. I've caught up on it since. 5 changes, 4 in the forwards. Does it make them stronger? Well, back row looks stronger, doesn't it? Darge and Watson back in, Crosby and Bradbury out. So very different looking back row there. Front 5, we see Johnny Gray gone completely Skinner in. Cherry in for Turner. Now, Cherry's a good player, but is that a better front 5 than last week? I'd argue not, to be honest. Let me know if there's any injuries playing there. I haven't heard of any. White comes in for Price. Now, is that just a straight rotation, or is that, Price being dropped? I'd probably say rotation. So that's the change there to the backline. Backline same as you see. So I'd say probably a tiny bit weaker because obviously Price is super experienced. No reflection on White particularly. Then on the bench, still plenty of inexperienced players as well. Sebastian, Christie, Thompson, all 1 or 2 caps between them. And then Rowe, the outside back, the back 3, maybe making his debut as well. So a tough call for them to come back against a really strong Argentina. They're going to need a big performance to pull that one back, but they are capable. So lots of interesting selections there, guys. Pop all the comments below. Can't wait to Saturday again, and I'll catch you next time.